Hello, I'm just checking in to this update I have for this Regen leadership course I'm doing through Holistic Management Canada. And a few days ago, we just finished up our fourth class. Now, it was going through some questions that were related to how we define success, how we know we're on the right track, as well as some examples of adaptive positioning. So the class first started off asking where we are. And I know I was actually having a little tough day getting ready for winter. I know in the last video you could see we have some snow here. So I just got in from trying to thaw some watering bowls that froze up. So in my head wasn't really in the meeting at that point. I was thinking ahead. Many others said, they're in their office, they're in their living room, they're in the, basement such as this. Dana talked about how often we can zoom out. We're on this planet Earth. We're in the Milky Way galaxy. Where we are can be either zoomed in or zoomed out. Now, this really touches on this adaptive positioning chart that we spent some time talking about, that talks about where we are and helps us to define success. Now that was a graph that had a y-axis and an x-axis, and it was really talked about the goal is to be down and to the right. Okay, and that, like for me, others had a hard time wrapping their head around that. So again, on this y-axis, it was levels of unmanaged threats and lost opportunities. Okay, so that's, we want to have, even though there might be a lot of threats there, the lower we are, there's fewer unmanaged threats or fewer lost opportunities, right? So that's the scale, vertical we want lower. And then on that x-axis, it was adaptive capacity or adaptive resources, caring, and responsibility level. So as we progress down that x-axis, we get more responsibility, more capacity, more resources. So that's, again, the goal is to move to the right. Now, the whole point on this exercise was, again, reframing, zooming out, and often our thoughtscape was mentioned. We're often zoomed in, right, what we're doing today, and that's where that axis can be kind of reoriented to the overall goal of being down and to the right. We can start having more unmanaged threats or more lost opportunities if we start zooming in. So there was quite a few book references that were made today that talk through this. I'm going to note one was a book, Multi-Solving by Elizabeth Son, and she talks about this interconnected relationship between social norms, zooming in and zooming out, that was mentioned. We then go on to give our own examples. I know my example was getting in together with peer groups. That was a way to adaptive positioning to help zoom out and to normalize with others to see that we're on the right track. I know others talked about really defining your context. Okay, again, that ties back to our holistic goals. Often that is multi-generational. Okay, that helps us to zoom out, not think about the next day, next week. All right. And it was talked about a few times that if we zoom out, and often some of the bigger challenges, political landscapes can get in our way, right? Like, I know we've just got past a U.S. election that might be, have concerns for Canada, some more tariffs at the border. So again, those are outside our circle of control, but they're inside our circle of concern. I know there was a lot of talk about this, things outside of our circle of control, and I kind of did a little research on this topic. There's often 3 concentric circles, and the outside one is our circle of concern, okay? And that's where politics come into play, global issues that are going on. But we don't have a lot of influence on them. Then we get tighter into that circle. Then it's the circle of influence. Those are our peers. Those are our family members. Those are our friends. And then right at the center, we have our circle of control. And the whole goal is to try to stay into that circle of control and not get pulled out into that big picture, into the worry area of those things outside of our control, but still in our circle of concern. Now, this is where we start getting political, and I know a few members talked about the system. The democracy is designed to be participatory. Okay, we need to participate, and several members or several students in the course, they have had experience going through sitting on boards, sitting in political arenas, and it was really talked about. It's very important, but you do have to be patient. Okay. And keep your composure. Often it feels like you're fighting an uphill battle. So there was a lot of discussion on being, again, being patient, being composed, being mindful of when emotions get tied into, because emotions, again, I mentioned, are a flag that guide us, which, like, I think of like the flags at the airports, right? Or windsock. They're directing us to where we should be concerned. And then zoom in at what we have control over. And by being on boards, being in political discussion, that just widens our circle of influence. Okay. It was talked about, things that are outside of our control. Try to create a new system, right? So there are options like that. I know I'm kind of working on a herd share project to try to connect livestock producers to consumers. So again, that's something within my circle of control, trying to get into that direct marketing side of things. I'm just going through still a few more notes. There was another good book that was referenced. I'm going to read a few quotes on that I believe is tied into this adaptive space, zooming in and zooming out, and understanding where we are in our transition, or in our period of life. The book was from the Quaker Institute, and it was How Society Shifts, Individual and Societal Transformations. I looked at this book after Dana had referenced it, after, again, talking about, again, I was commenting on things outside of our control. And this really did give me a better framing to society and how society transitions. I'm just going to give a little bit of a couple quotes that I pulled this reference up. It's available online. Let's read this. The different individual worldviews of each of these phases may be encapsulated as successively. First, you move through these stages, and often this is stages of life. First, the world is an unknown over which I have no control. Okay, so that's where when we're younger, right, we're with our parents or guardians, and we're just learning. Everything's outside of our control. We're just learning. The next stage is the world is a problem which I must cope. Okay, so then we get into a stage where we feel we don't have a big influence. We look at the world as a problem. We're just dealing with it. The third phase, we transition. The world is a project in which I must participate. Okay. And then last, the world is a mystery for which I must care. So again, the goal is to progress through those stages. And they talk about it's an emotional transition from often from beliefs that we learn from an ideal family. And he distinguishes two different ideologies that are parenthood from the strict father perspective or the nurturing parent. And there was a bit of discussion on that strict father figure and more the nurturing mother figure, and how often the feminine perspective is often more nurturing and caring, thinking of others, where the masculine perspective is more about me, myself, and I. So to transition from me to we, okay? And I know there was a good image someone talked about going from egocentric, okay, which is the self, to an ecocentric view, where ecology, there is no one, it's removing that hierarchy, and we go from, again, me to we. So that was kind of discussed. If we change our perspective, not all about ourselves, think about what is within our circle of control, we can get away from that self-centered view of the world. And often it is a transition through life. Again, early on, we're learning from our um, teachers. Then we get to a position where we know that we are just a small part of the bigger picture, but we do have a role to play. And I know for me personally, I think that has come to light, and I've mentioned it before. I am a father now, a father of a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So again, I have a bigger circle of influence on my children. And the other aspect is the passing of my father this year, so that I've lost someone that was a big part of influencing me, realizing that I'm just a small part of a big picture. So again, that transitioning from those three parts: the world is a problem I must cope, the world is a project that I must participate in, and the world is a mystery for which I must care. We want people to move through those knowing that it takes time. And again, the quote, "The teacher will appear when the student is ready." And for me, I understand that, yeah, I think the world is a project that I'm trying to participate in. So that's, again, in different ways. What is our circle of control? Zoom out to make sure we're on the right path. And I'm just going to give my last little final thought here. This is for myself to self-reflect. I picked this up from the Faro Cattle Company newsletter that I subscribe to. It talks about practicing gratefulness. Okay, and that helps us to relieve us from some of this entitlement that is plaguing our country today, and moving away from that self or me to we. And this is kind of timely. It's close to the American Thanksgiving. And I'll just finish with this. May we be grateful for the many blessings we have received and thankful for God's infinite mercy. Okay, when we're thankful for the many things around us, I think that puts us in that perspective that we can go to embrace the many positive things in this world and get away from the negative side. So that's all I wanted to check in. Again, it was a little bit, it was great to discuss these topics, how everyone else defines success, how we can reframe things, sometimes to zoom out. Again, to stay positive. For me, it's trying to be grateful, lower our worry and stress, and know that we need to participate. The world is something we need to participate in, and to move our circle of influence to others. Sometimes that's getting out and talking about things that are uncomfortable, get out of our comfort zone and grow. So anyway, that's all I have for this week. I look forward to checking in on some of the other videos and some of the other check-ins, and to talk about our next discussion. So for those of you have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll check in with you shortly. Take care.